Welcome back. We're speaking to Dr. Yaseen about the importance of following madhabs, following this way to go with regards to our deen, because we've been here for 1400 years, and so we're not directly connected to the Prophet ﷺ, but we have scholars, great scholars. And so, Dr. Yaseen, one of the issues that we see is the problem of has the doors of ijtihad closed? Ijtihad is scholarly reasoning, and one of the things that I learned is that there are many sciences needed in order to become a mujtahid, someone who can go directly to the Quran and Sunnah and see this is the problem. Especially we have modern problems as well, these ethical issues within medicine, within all areas and fields. How do we go from a base level to becoming a mujtahid and becoming that as opposed to taqleed, which is seen as blind following? And so how do you understand, can you define these terms properly for us and explain its context to us?
I'm not sure that I would attempt to define the terms, but I think that one can maybe one can maybe understand these things by some clear examples.
Yep.
And what I see, I remember I went to a talk many years ago which was described as thinking outside the box. Now, people use this expression a lot.
Yes.
And it struck me at the time, that's what's wrong.
Okay.
Because from a Muslim point of view, we have our box. We know basically the limits of fiqh. We have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, we go through to the end of the book, and we've covered all the basic topics. So in a sense, one wants to be within the box. Going outside the box is actually going to extremes. That's being extremist.
Yep.
We want to be, as it were, within normality, the normality of the deen. And to give a very simple example, but it's also a very deep example, if you look at the whole issue of the modern financial system,
Yep.
paper money. Of course, it's no longer paper money even, it's you have a plastic credit card and then it blips on a computer screen or something.
Online,
it's become something else. Where's the actual solid wealth? But when you start looking at the subject, you realize very early on that this whole system, which has only been set up within the last 100 years maximum, say the 1930s or something like that, when they started the gold standard business and this sort of thing. And you realize that it's bypassed people,
yeah.
that what we take as money is basic. Now this is a big topic, and I can't even begin to talk about it in sort of 5 minutes, 10 minutes or anything.
Yeah.
But we see that, how am I going to say this? We are dealing with a system of technique.
Okay.
We're dealing, it's a technique that, put it this way, money is imagined to exist for the purpose of charging interest on it.
Okay.
Putting it in a sort of simple nutshell like this, the paper money that we are dealing with is a fictitious loan.
Whereas gold, that has always stayed the same.
It's solid, you can hold it in your hand.
Inflation was never
And
there.
camels are there, and animals are...
But we live in the world, which there is paper.
People say that, but if people realize that it was a technique to take money from them,
Okay.
so the banks are always, I mean, for example, you come to South Africa, you have to pay for a bank account.
Yeah.
You think, what? And then when you put money in, you have to pay to deposit. And you start thinking to yourself, hang on, what's going on?
Yeah.
And people don't realize that all of that money that they're seemingly paying into the bank is then lent out by the bank at 10% or 50% or whatever the percentage is to other people. So they're using money to create money, and at the end of the day, that bank, what does it produce? A car? No. What does it produce? Palm oil? No. What does it produce? Anything solid? No. It's all these people working with money day in, day out, and they get a profit at the end of the year. Money for money is haram.
Yeah.
Clear riba. So we have something that none of them of their head would have been the slightest bit in question about.
Yeah.
Sometimes they say, oh, Imam Abu Hanifa allows you if it's in Dar al-Harb or something, but then you read the details and you find even that is if it's to the advantage of the Muslims, never to the advantage of the kuffar.
Okay.
So all of these things, so we talk about ijtihad, somehow we have to sort of get back to basics.
Okay.
The ijtihad is right out on the limb somewhere, and we're faced with something very immediate. And remember, and I would say this to everybody, that there are two things that Allah has declared war on.
Yeah.
One in the hadith and one in the Quran. In the Quran, without trying to quote the ayah and get it wrong, فَأَذَنُوا بِحَرْبٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ, for riba, be warned of a war from Allah and His Messenger. And the other one is مَنْ عَادَ وَلِيًّا لِي, or مَنْ عَادَ لِي وَلِيًّا أَنْتُهُ بِالْحَرْبِ. So anyone who shows enmity to a friend of mine, they're the two extremes.
Right?
Yes, exactly.
Back to that?
So you have people now who deny the awliya, deny this and deny that, and they live with the riba, thinking it's fine. Let's have an Islamic bank and we'll put on this, pattern of Islam. So we have this thing. So in a sense, ijtihad would be a wonderful luxury if we could get back to any sort of real ijtihad, because we're so far away from the norm.
Yeah.
And ijtihad is when you've exhausted the norm and you have to go a little bit further. In a sense, I feel it's almost the other way around. We have to sort of cut off the dead wood and somehow get back to the real plant of the Deen.
Yeah, I mean, they used to say people used to rob banks. Now they just build banks in order to get money. And so you mentioned a beautiful example that the madhabs, we go into two extremes with regards to the ulama. And Imam Shafi'i said that if the ulama who act upon their knowledge are not the awliya, then there are no awliya. So these are the people of the madhahib. And also a prime example you gave with regards to interest, and that is so common out there. Yeah. And so these are the things, when we get back to methodology and the true hub, and love of the awliya, and with regards to that, it's a really excellent example. One of the hadith that comes to mind is in Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ says about the people on the boat. These people are at the hull of the ship, they dig a hole. Say, why can't we just get the water down there? Why do we have to bother the people up there? And the Prophet ﷺ, if you don't help them, everyone will perish. And so that's indicative of the situation that we are in. These are real examples. If we don't help people go back to the Quran and Sunnah, not simply that we can read this ourselves, but through this madhab, which is really a road, a pathway to understand that. And so what are your ending, because this is the end of the show, unfortunately. I wish we could have 2 hours more of speaking. In a nutshell, what would you say the solution, what is the step forward for the youth and for Muslims to realize with regards to our fiqh? Because fiqh isn't only worship, it's like you mentioned, riba, finance and all these things, with regards to our daily lives and how it affects us.
That's obviously, you put me as it were in the hot seat, which is what this is, I suppose. But istafti qalbak, walau aftaka nas wa aftak. Ask your heart for a decision, even if people give you decision after decision. And so there comes a point where you have to wasting time thinking, but one has to purify oneself in order to get some kind of pure answer. Yeah. I mean, I think Allah does not change the state of a people until they change what's in themselves. Yeah. Now that is true whether we're talking individuals, whether we're talking families, whether we're talking groups, whatever we're talking about. Transformation, very common term now in South Africa with a different application here, but basically it's going to have to be everybody has to transform themselves. Everybody makes mistakes. How do you get out of those mistakes you've made? Everybody makes stupid mistakes because the self is already always ordering to evil. Absolutely. So you find yourself stuck in these situations. This is on an immediate level. How can you change the world if you can't change yourself? Absolutely. How can you put everybody else right if you can't put yourself right? So somehow, I know it sounds like a simple answer, but one has to get back. One has to get back to oneself, and doing things with a view of purifying oneself as much as possible. Tazkiyat an-nafs. Purifying the self as much as possible.
Because that's what fiqh is more than ritual, it's spiritual.
Yeah, the prayer is a purification. Paying zakat is a purification. Nobody's paying zakat. They think they are, but it's become sort of public charity or something, becomes something else.
That's it.
And so all of these things, I would say keep it simple and start from yourself.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for joining us today. The excellent discussion with Dr. Yaseen Kippie. Thank you for joining us, and see you next week.